Hi, my name's Dave Neff, and I'm with the Carnegie Museum Board of Directors here in Fairfield, Iowa.
I'm Lawrence Eyre, and I'm a newer member of the Board of Directors as well.
We would like to take time today to be able to reflect on our director, Mark Shafer, and some of his accomplishments during the time that we have been involved for the last 3 years and 2 years being on our museum board. So I'm going to start out and ask a question. When I say the name Mark Shafer, what is the first thing that comes to your mind, Lawrence?
First thing I think of is really extra mild kindness, that Mark had that about him. He was willing to drop whatever he was working on to talk to whoever was asking him questions or who just showed up on third floor. It was quite clear that he was at home in the museum, and his willingness to show and share what he knew there, it struck me right away when I joined the board of directors. So that extra mild kindness, and then encyclopedic knowledge, really of not only of the museum contents but of Fairfield and its history. Those both have stood out to me the whole time, and I learned so much talking with Mark. History is kind of what I'm a nerd for, and Mark was an uber nerd of history without any question, and I mean that as a compliment.
I reflect on Mark as someone that picked up the torch. There were two gentlemen, Ben Taylor and Paul Sells, that preceded him. I was the beneficiary of Paul Sells' physics class at Parsons College, and whatever he decided he wanted to do, it usually got accomplished. And I guess one of the first things from Paul was developing the solar system that still hangs from our ceiling with the sun and takes the planets all the way out from there. But Mark had a real passion to be able to preserve what we had, but also to bring in new ideas and things that he had. So I guess my vision, my reflection is he had that capability, but he would always take time to stop and visit with individuals and share the knowledge that he had going forward from there.
Yeah, the tradition, his respect for tradition was clear when I began working at the museum, and his creativity. I mean, we can see his artistry certainly, but his creativity in displaying what was there and wanting a willingness to do new things. Juneteenth was brand new to him. The Underground Railroad was brand new to him. As you know, Dave, I've been working on the Dick DeAngelis films as a research director for those Fairfield history films, and our second film was a large chunk of it was about the Underground Railroad, and the involvement here had to be really carefully spoken about or done because it was a heterogeneous community. It wasn't all Quakers here. It wasn't all members of the same congregational church who were abolitionists. It was a mixed population here, including people that came from a previous slave state background. And the kind of hiding, the clandestine in a good way, activities of the Underground Railroad conductors and people who were sympathetic, it was something that required a lot of work to find, and then it was there. And as soon as Mark saw how much in our county and Jefferson County generally had been hidden all this time to preserve really the safety of the people who had participated from reprisals 2-3 generations later, he wanted to make sure then the word got out and he was all in. He just kept pouring requests and research and interest into the topic, and really the triumph of Mark's involvement was the Juneteenth celebration in 2022.
It was remarkable to see all the pieces come together, being the first time at it, and hopefully it's our plan to be able to continue this type of a celebration on there. Mm-hmm. What do you feel was the biggest impact that Mark had on the Carnegie Museum during his tenure there?
His students come back there. What I noticed, today, Jason Strong, director of photography for the film series, was there. People would show up always, letting us know that they were grateful to Mark. They'd say it to him directly. They'd also be sure to tell us, he made a difference when I was his student at Fairfield High School. He made a difference in giving me confidence when I wanted to take a new career direction, and so on. I figure I've seen only a small slice of the number of people that he had that positive influence for when they were students. And I can only gather, only guess really how many that totals out to be. So such a huge impact from his heart and from his mind. He helped give people, kind of steer them in directions they're happy for.
He really did touch a lot of people, and when you figure he spent 10 years in the elementary, another 10 years plus or minus at the middle school working with special needs students, and then the impact he had at the Fairfield High School on that career. So how many students does a teacher have during their career? It's tough to guess, but with your teaching career, I'm sure you've had a similar reflection of looking in the rearview mirror and say, look at where these kids have gone and look at what they've done.
I know every teacher is happy for the successes that the children that you've taught, the kids that you've taught on high school level or coached, that they've enjoyed in life, and it's really it's a fulfillment without any question. And I can only assume, and I could see at the few times I could see at the museum, Mark enjoyed that fulfillment whenever they came back, whenever they thanked him.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Biggest impact, I think, is the vision that he has had. We had talked about board going with him and walking around. We were able to do a portion of that. It wasn't to the detail we wanted, but of course he felt most comfortable in a chair with wheels on it, and we could take his desk chair, and we toured him around, and Therese Kaminsky, another one of our board members, took some notes of what he thought the vision was going to be for each of the display cases and what he'd like to see happen. And so we're not just guessing at it. We know that we have some documentation, and we're going to move forward with implementation of some of his visions that he is not able to see completed, but our board has knowledge of that as to where he wanted places, where they wanted to go.
Yeah, that's where the encyclopedic part comes right in. I noticed it right away. Some people would look at a display and see 3 or 4 things, and he would be able to go through every item in that display case, explain where it came from, explain the history behind it, and explain the museum's goal in featuring it for people to see and to learn about. The thoroughness, as well as the depth of his knowledge, as well as the artistic eye that he had for presenting, both stood out in the short time that I was there.
Yeah, yeah. So taking this vision, and what do you see some of these near-term projects that the museum can implement from that walk around that we did with Mark?
Well, I think certainly an extension of some of the projects that became dear to his heart in recent years, the Underground Railroad in particular. It's interesting that our museum now is being approached by several other historical societies. Henry County, for example, Ottumwa, and others are wanting to see what we've done. If we look at it in Underground Railroad networked terms, we were all part of that same network at various times. People would move seeking freedom from one of our towns to the other, and we would share that. And I think Mark, was delighted. I know he spoke of Jasmine Avenue as a series of safe houses, and that's what it was, to use today's terms. And he was proud, that there are family farms of people whom we know only too well from the community for their initial reluctance to talk about it, perhaps for offending some grandchildren or great-grandchildren of bounty hunters from Missouri. Now everyone's coming forth, and he kind of gave the green light for people to be able to reveal that about their family histories with a great deal of quiet pride and well-deserved pride on their part. So I'd like to continue that, not only with our own museum, but our neighbor museums. And I think Mark was very much wanting to see that extension happen.
We are blessed in southeast Iowa that each of our counties does have some form of a historical society museum. We're finding that others, as we invite them to come over, are just, I don't want to say astounded, but they go, wow, this is what you folks are doing here? And you're not just open during the summer months, but you're open through the 12 months of the year. And you have this First Friday Art Walk, and you highlight your farming history. We're into our 8th month now of having heritage farms that have been 150 years in the same family. And we're also booked out all the way through 2023 as we begin to hit the century farms. And Mark says, we're going to have a display case just for this, and it's going to rotate. So every month we have a brand new display of a family. And you had a chance to visit and know David Switzer.
Yes.
With the film. Please.
One of the, both in the film and now, just last Friday night, the Switzer family, who began farming here in 1843, 3 years before Iowa became a state. And David Switzer, whose forebear, David Switzer, was an original surveyor of Jefferson County, chose that property, and we could understand why. We saw there were trophies there for yield per acre as best in the state of Iowa. Amazing stories from that family. And there are 14, as you're bringing up, Dave, there are 14 family farms that have qualified for the 150-year Heritage Farm Program here in the state of Iowa. It's quite remarkable. And then many, many more who've been here a century or more toward the 150s. So we're looking forward when they get to tell their stories. The families find artifacts. Some of them brought 13,000-year-old Clovis Point arrowheads and spear points.
Say that again. How many thousand?
13,000 years old,
my.
And from found on their property. They bring everything, every manner of artifacts. It's a lot of fun. We have to ask a little bit cautiously: is this a green tractor family or a red tractor family? And so far, it's worked out if we ask in advance. And Mark wanted to make sure that we would be diplomatic. You know, we usually look at mailboxes to see if it's a Cyclone or a Hawkeye mailbox too, and it's worked out really well so far.
Good. Okay. You being on our board of directors and a leader, if we had to prioritize going forward, taking Mark's ideas, taking the current board's ideas and stuff, what do you see the low-hanging fruit? What are the first steps that we can be taking here as we begin 2023 in order to keep the museum moving forward, express new ideas, take ideas that Mark had, and blend them together to come up with a game plan? So what do you see the first couple, 2 or 3 projects being?
One of those, because this is the year, 50th anniversary year of the last Parsons College classes, the last graduation in 1973. That'll be the 50th reunion for that. It's going to be in October 6th through 8th, and I know that the featuring of Parsons history, both on the 3rd floor of the museum and on the 1st in the new gallery, has been a priority for Mark, and that we want to extend that, and we want to invite as many Parsons alumni here as we possibly can. We've been learning through the yearbooks, through interviews, for the film that's going to come out on the very same weekend. It's just going to be called Parsons, which it should be. That I think is something we want to think Mark would be proud of. Another feature along with the Family Farms project that has begun so recently is that Mark told us of his own experience in a one-room schoolhouse. And so many of our farm families had stories of being in one-room schoolhouses that we want to have an exhibit for that by way of having reunions by township. Each of the 12 townships of Jefferson County is going to have a reunion for the people who went to the one-room schoolhouses. The stories are amazing, and it really, is oral history in the best sense. We want to hear the voices of those who've had that distinctive experience. Iowa, it turns out, had more one-room schoolhouses than any other state in the United States.
Really?
And there were 99 one-room schoolhouses in Jefferson County alone. So Mark was in one of them, and we want to make sure that we tell the story of everybody who went there.
One-room schoolhouses, well, they touched a lot of people, but the opportunity with one-room schoolhouses, and also we find that there were a number of ghost towns.
Yes.
Towns that were a vital part of being along the railroad, and they provided services and groceries and other things. But as the county grew, they have dissipated, and they're just a little crossroad right now, and that's about it. But we have so much history in building on those 99 schoolhouses to be able to tell and bring people together by townships and have that type of a celebration from there.
So I think, you know, we like always to think, what would Mark enjoy us pursuing and extending? And those are two things that have come to our mind. I'm sure more will as we discover notes that he had. He was always planning what should be next, and we're learning of some of those things even now.
We have the opportunity to have I won't say a blank slate in front of us. We have these projects, but we are also looking for new ideas. But we would rather walk than try and run and have things happen in sequential order. But what are the things that we can do to experience success immediately, and not just say, we got a long-range project, we'll get around to it. But if we can show the public that we are able to pick off and accomplish what we say we're going to do, we feel our credibility will grow. Mark will be shining down saying, hey, job well done, guys. Keep it up. Keep it up from there.
That's what we're hoping for sure.
Right, right. Well, we appreciate the opportunity to be able to share with you, but Dave Neff and
Lawrence Eyre,
Board of Directors of the Carnegie Historical Museum, and we hope to carry this forward for many years and be able to pass the torch with more successes happening. Thank you.